Let me check mine.
Hello Africa, and how you doing? Welcome to today's It's Time to Shine. I've spoken about this concept in several ways. I've spoken about it's time to shine as an individual on the world's biggest platform for professionals. I've also spoken about the concept of you shining as a recruiter, as an HR person, bringing in the best talent in the world to work for your organization. I've spoken and added on to that about it's time to shine as a company. What do you need to do to attract, hire, and retain the best talent in the world? And then lastly, I've spoken about it's time to shine. Where is it? Right here as a continent. Africa, this is your time. And on this show particularly, we're going to spend some time talking about what are the nuances and what are the things Africa needs to do to shine as a continent. Today's focus is really going to be about shining as a brand, shining as a recruiter, bringing in the best talent, and I've got none other but the very best when it comes to digital marketing and employer branding, Sam Coom. Come on in, Sam.
Good morning, Africa. Stu, thank you so much. It's awesome to be here discussing employer branding, which is something very, very close to my heart.
Welcome, Africa, please. Let me see some love coming out of you. Let me see you online. Where you tapping in from? Say hello to Sam. And if you've got any questions, like I said, really, this show is about you. Ask the questions, and we've got the subject matter expert, Sam, in the room, who will be answering those questions. Sam, as we wait for those questions,
Yeah.
who are you and what you're all about? What do you do at LinkedIn?
So what I do at LinkedIn is actually I'm a media solutions manager. I look after the whole of growth markets alongside a colleague of mine. But mostly I operate within Africa, Israel, the Turkey SMB market, Malta and Greece. As you can see, I'm representing all my love for Africa today. I am South African, and I was brought over by LinkedIn 10 months ago to come and help African customers, along with the rest of growth markets, to really understand how to create impactful employer brand strategies that are really going to cut through the noise that is social media and reach out to the right and the right quality candidates.
Excellent, excellent. Sam, LinkedIn tradition, no surprise to you. Tell us one thing that's not on your profile that Africa needs to know about.
So what's not on my profile?
That you're passionate about.
Well, animal print being one, hence the pants today. So everybody knows me on the floor as the African girl because of my general attire and my representation every day, because I'm a very, very proud African, more so South African. What else is not on my LinkedIn profile, Stu? The fact that I can floss, but a lot of my customers and clients have seen me do this at a lot of events. So I'm not going to floss for you now. Maybe if you caught me in Vegas last week, I would have done that, but definitely not today.
I love that, I love that. So Sam, we are getting feeds, we've got people on. We've got hellos coming out of Kenya, we've got hellos coming out of South Africa, we've got hellos coming out of Nigeria, and outside of the African continent, which is awesome. Thank you guys for joining us. It's an important subject because the world of work has changed. Retention has changed, attraction has changed, and Sam is going to take us through that. But before we get started, Sam, in a nutshell, in human talk, what is employer branding?
Guys, employer branding, I think for a while now has been a complete buzzword in the industry, but it's actually nothing new when we look at it within the branding context. I mean, the general question I ask when I'm at events is, would you rather work for Apple or would you rather work for Dell? Many people shy away, unfortunately, from Dell, even though it was one of the first hardware manufacturers, and they obviously want to work for Apple. So the way I really simply explain it is, just as a consumer brand has so much power, as you choose Apple over Dell or Coca-Cola over Pepsi, so does an employer brand. It's really just the way we articulate the employer value proposition, which is really your values, your culture, and the way we package it and send it out to the industry to really tell a compelling and authentic story about your brand. So in a nutshell, it's really nothing new. It's just articulating what you as an employer are promising both your current employees and future employees about working at your company.
Wow, I love that. And I like the fact that you touched on culture right up front.
Yeah.
So today I'm rocking something a little unique, trying something new. I hope you like it.
Are you talking about the hat that we both wore together in Vegas? Stuart made me hunt the whole of America for that hat.
Yeah, so LinkedIn allows you to bring your own personal self into the business and really be yourself. How important is it for organizations to allow employees to take intelligent risks and bring themselves into the work environment?
Well, as someone that really believes in seeing and doing things differently, I really believe that if a company is as authentic as they say they are inside, then their stories are really easy to articulate on the outside. And I think it really always starts with the inside experience of an employee. We all know that your employees are your best brand advocates because they really sell your culture more than anything. And if it's sort of like the Snow White concept where you have a beautiful shiny red apple and you bite into it, it really becomes or can become quite a sour experience.
Yeah.
You want that to really translate internally to your external value proposition so that the two connect. I really call that a top-down and a bottom-up strategy where your employees are reinforcing the message up and then obviously your new candidates down into the industry.
Love it, love it. So Sam, today I promised the audience we're going to do something different.
Yeah.
It's time to shine, and I thought the best way to do the Q&A around this is to spin the wheels. So something a little new. Let's see if it works as we take questions coming in from online. Everybody who's online, thank you very much. I'm seeing the comments. People are giving shout outs and saying hello to you, Sam, from across the entire globe.
I can't see the comments right now, but I'm really, really looking forward to seeing them after the session. So thank you for the support, everybody. We're really excited to make Africa and the rest of growth markets an amazing place to understand employer branding and utilize it.
Super. So Sam, I'm going to let you go first and I'll take the second turn. I've got a couple of topics right here that are going to stimulate conversation and get the interaction going. So, go for that
Can
spin.
you give me a 3, 2, 1, Stu?
3, 2, 1. First topic.
Okay, what have we landed on?
You're not going to win something, but...
Oh,
Oh.
okay. so
I set you up on this one. The first one, WTF.
So what's the fuss around employer
Fuss,
branding?
F-U-S-S.
So really, why we decided to put this on the board was really the whole demystifying the whole space around employer branding. So I spoke to that really in my intro around what employer branding is very simply and how you can possibly use it. But really, what is the essence of employer branding? Why do people need it? I think right now something topical is the fourth industrial revolution and digital skills.
Yeah.
For example, if you cannot articulate a really strong employer brand and a place where really people want to work, you're really missing out on that level of top talent. So for example, you're a business right now that needs to recruit software developers. If you have an average employer brand, you're never going to recruit out of those really gold chip corporates where you actually want talent to come from. You're going to get the people applying for your job that really hate their jobs right now, they're disengaged in their work, and that's not essentially what you want because that adds to retention and attrition issues later on. So really what you want to be doing is packaging your employer brand to be really distinct to certain individuals that really hit the nail on the culture fit, the character fit, and the values, because those employees stay longer. So if you can do the work up front around your employer brand and really selling that in a very authentic way, you're going to connect to the right talent, therefore making your recruitment strategy, I think, quicker, the quality better, and saving yourself a lot of money in the long run. So that really is my WTF around employer branding.
All right then, so I know you talked about software developers and everybody tries to mimic, so some of these larger corporations, so maybe let's put in a slide, let's put in some comfy chairs, let's make the place bright. Employer branding, is that the right approach in terms of selling this, or are you just going to get people who are looking for a different experience?
So I really think maybe 3 years ago it was cool to have a foosball table, it was great to have free coffee. But I really think the industry has moved on and it can really tell when a brand is being very fickle about its culture. And a foosball table and free coffee is not culture, those are just functional benefits. So I think when your company sells on those facts, again, you're not going to connect with the right individuals because of the way the industry has moved along. But if you're selling the type of projects, the type of software, the type of hardware, you really create your value proposition around meaningful work. I feel like that really cuts through the clutter again of all the noise on social media and how other brands are just sort of doing a checkbox exercise to recruit these individuals. What do you offer as a company that's beyond those functional benefits? Maybe interview a couple of software developers at your work about what they love and also what they hate. A lot of brands that possibly need to do a repositioning job or have quite a bad reputation forget that they can turn negative into positive.
Right.
I mean, if something like long hours is really a negative that you get back from your developers, for example, how can you turn that around maybe into a positive value proposition around working long hours to actually solve complex problems? So I really think that, I mean, no negative PR is ever bad. You can really always turn it into something positive as long as you're always being authentic.
Authenticity, that's what matters. And of course, leading with some intelligence, like you said, from the interviews or even borrowing on some of the insights that are globally available now on what really matters to people. And as you rightly touched, impactful work is one of the biggest draw cards, not the slide, not the swing, and the free coffee. All right, so that's the first one done.
Tick.
I'm gonna tick that one off, and we're gonna spin the wheel. My turn.
And it matches my shirt, so I wonder what the next color is.
My turn, Sam. Here we go. You ready for this one?
Oh.
As we said, if you're just joining, if you got a question, prep it up, send it into the chat window, and we'll definitely ask that question to Sam. Next one, employer branding, specifically on talking to candidates. What have you got to say on that?
Okay, cool. So I really think the experience needs to be end to end. So what you're communicating through different channels and different platforms really makes a difference. Not to say that LinkedIn really should be the primary channel, although we really see a lot of our professionals on there and the best success for many of our clients. But it's all about having an integrated strategy and understanding where your candidates are sitting. Yes, we have the largest growing platform for graduates right now in Africa and South Africa, but the point is understand where these people are sitting and be able to package a message that's relevant to audience all the time. Another thing I'd really like to add on this point is that what happens with life after a LinkedIn campaign or after you've done a certain level of employer branding and someone has actually been hired or maybe they've been shortlisted. Possibly even when they haven't quite made the end goal of being hired and they're actually still in your pipeline. How do you keep engaging with these people in an authentic and consistent way around your employer brand? Is it an email database that you create from the data that you've collected? Would you like to use SMS marketing to keep these people always on? I think something that a lot of brands forget about is, yes, they spend a lot of money up front creating these beautiful stories and getting people through the funnel. But once they're through the funnel to the bottom of it, what are you doing with these candidates? They have said to you, I'm interested in your brand. I want to work for you. You don't just want to leave someone there. I mean, if you think about it in a sales context, you'd never leave a lead to go cold.
That's
so
right.
How do you ensure that your candidates are treated just like your leads in terms of keeping them warm and engaged with your brand? So that's really what I'd like to encourage the people on this call, the clients on this call to think about, is what's next after the bottom of the funnel. How can you turn that funnel that's currently shaped, well, in my opinion, it should be a circle because it's always on, but a funnel that's really shaped like an upside down triangle into a triangle that then creates value at the bottom end.
Okay. And is there a different way of engaging with passive candidates?
So I think so, Stu. I mean, our whole value proposition is around cold and warm members.
Right.
And there's a bit of science and methodology that goes into actually taking a member from a cold, unengaged phase to actually someone that's literally knocking on your door, that's a follower, that's really ready to jump on any job that you may post.
Right.
So going back to that, I think it's important to understand your followers at first. It's all around building a community. And your community or your followers essentially are your warm members. So unless you're creating a community of people that are actually candidates or customers for your business, it's kind of null and void.
Yeah.
So I would really encourage you to have a look at that and do a bit of a matrix and understand who your warm members are. Are they adding value to your business? Who are the cold members that haven't otherwise engaged with your brand? And how are you going to change that picture so that all the warm members essentially are the people that you want in your community?
Okay, I like that. All right, so that's candidates ticked off. And it's your turn to spin that wheel. Let's go.
Hopefully we land on a better color that isn't next to each other.
Let's see what comes up.
What have we got?
And as we said, if you got questions, keep posting those online and I'll get Sam to respond.
We've actually stopped right in the middle. I don't know if you guys can see. So we're between mobile devices and content is king.
So what do you want to hear? Mobile devices or content is king? Go ahead, type it in. I will check and definitely we will see.
So maybe actually I could actually touch on both of them.
All right.
I'd like to start on something that's really close to my heart at the moment because it seems to be a real struggle for companies right now and to actually come up with content which really is actually the easiest part, guys. You have this information living on corporate websites, on your Instagram accounts, on corporate newsletters that you're sending around internally. It's just really about packaging it in a really simple way that doesn't create a lot of work for you. So really when it comes to content, there's a couple of ways that you can generate content. One of the biggest trends for 2019 was actually user-generated content.
Right.
So how could you maybe come up with a simple competition within your business to send you 30 seconds on what life at your particular business or enterprise sector is like? Maybe it's the industry you want people to talk on.
Right.
They could win a coffee voucher, a meal voucher. It doesn't have to be something in excess, but rather something really simple, where your whole company ends up sending you a stream of great authentic content that you can repurpose. Maybe it's a competition of some sort where they get into a finalist, and then your agency or your internal marketing department actually makes those into sort of real movies. But one thing I would also encourage you to work against is actually overproducing content.
Yeah.
I think back to the authenticity point, and I know I beat this drum a lot,
Right.
but it really makes a difference when it comes to engagement, especially around those higher quality candidates. They can smell nonsense content, if I can call it that, or
Right.
overproduce stuff that is really fake. So keep it authentic, leverage your employees to tell that story, and really don't overcomplicate it, is the message essentially that I want to project around content. Grab something off your website, go onto your YouTube channel, repurpose content. I once heard a really great line that content is like a Christmas turkey. You have your Christmas meal with your family. The next day you could make it into a curry, Durban girl. The next day you could make it into hamburgers. So really it's around how you take that content and reframe it for different audiences. And the way we build our campaigns, especially with LinkedIn, is you can create dark posts. So you could take the same video, change the copy slightly again for your audience to make it relative or
Right.
relevant, and really send that out in a way that nobody else will see that you've duplicated anything. So main message there is keep it simple.
Keep it simple, and
Yeah.
the fact that content doesn't have to necessarily only come out of corporate communications, public relations, and marketing.
It can come from your employees.
From your employees, from your hiring managers,
Yeah.
and also from your executives. How powerful is it, or how important is it for executives to be on LinkedIn, to be on these platforms when it comes to content? How important is that?
So for me, again, it speaks to that top-down, bottom-up approach. I really think, especially in Africa and growth markets,
Right.
people are a bit shy still to really tell their story, and maybe it's management, maybe it's the hierarchy that is African business, but I really think that if executives pave the way around social leadership, it doesn't only really reinforce employees and excite them, it also does a great job at positioning yourselves as thought leaders amongst your own peers at
Right.
that C-level, if that makes sense. So for me, it's really important from a business to business, business to consumer, and business to employee angle to start to leverage your leaders to tell that story, because they, if anything, can advise on the strategy, the way forward. Create celebrities out of your leaders. Get them to create some healthy competition within the industries that you work. It's really, really great to see leaders being brave. And it's not only the Western world, like Ireland, the UK, America, that need to do this. We need to raise African leaders up and position them as experts just as much as the rest of the world.
I love it. I love it. And then what about mobile
Yes.
devices, right? So most people these days, their first interaction with LinkedIn or any digital platform is on mobile devices. So how does that tie into employer brand?
So funny enough, Stu, I'd like to almost put a challenging comment to that
Okay.
everybody assumes that everybody's on mobile. I mean, yes, okay, if you look at different audiences, and that as a marketer, a core marketer, I always remember audience and I go back to that. Who are we talking to and how are they consuming us? So for example, if you're recruiting possibly in Africa in the mining sector and they're below sort of those sort of white collar positions or leadership positions,
Right.
maybe we need to be more conscious of how people are consuming our content. Because if you think around data limitations
Yeah.
in growth markets and places like that, we're not as mature as the rest of the world. Our Wi-Fi capability isn't quite there yet. So how can we make sure an experience is really consistent for all of the members? So again, going back to audience, do some research around the typical or the group that you're trying to engage with. Understand, are they on a computer? Is LinkedIn or social media blocked for them at work? And create the experience around that. Obviously, with other certain markets, mobile experience, yes, of course, is the way to go. But again, just remember your audience.
Yeah, and go in with intelligence.
Yeah.
In your day job, I guess that's what you do in terms of trying to tell whether to publish something because predominantly it's going to desktop or predominantly going to mobile.
And I mean, I have that experience all the time personally. I constantly A/B test. A/B test is possibly taking the same piece of content or the style of content and posting it at different times of the day, posting it in different ways, video versus static image versus article. Find out again what is resonating with that particular audience and use that.
Excellent. Lead with intelligence. So I'm going to tick off content, and I'm also going to tick off mobile devices. Superb.
Hopefully we get a green one next, because those I think are the more exciting ones.
All right, so I'm going to do a spin and let's see what comes up, Sam. Gave it a bit of a push there. As we said, if you're online and you've got questions, Sam is a subject matter expert around employer branding, which is what we're talking about today. Got a couple of topics up here. We're spinning the wheel, but if you've got something that's burning, put it on the chat. Thank you very much for the comments that are coming through so far. Put it on the chat window and we'll ask and Sam will answer. So,
okay, this is an interesting one. Back to pink, my worst.
Top 3 employer branding fails that you've seen. Biggest mistakes people make.
Okay, so I think actually not doing any research. So going back to your piece, Stuart, around intelligence.
Number 1, research.
I've seen three similar banks, actually not just relative to Africa, but in a global context, that have used exactly the same strapline. So again, that kind of, it's not authentic, right?
Yeah.
It shows they haven't done research about what these employees are actually looking for. So really, how do you differentiate yourself in a world where everybody, again, is using things like let's do it together, we work in collaborative environments, we have the best culture. So they become buzzwords. How do you differentiate your value proposition so that you're not stuck in that jargon that is this new sort of corporate language? So really do research and understand your audience. So that would be the first fail, Stuart, is everybody had the same strapline.
Research. Number 2.
Yeah, the second strapline I think is around image sizes and quality. So you're spending all this money, right, on media. If you are particularly one of those clients, or all your effort really and internal resource in creating things, but often they're pixelated, they don't fit the frame properly. Take that extra little bit of care, because that is your first experience that many of these members are having with your brand, especially if you're using paid media. So you don't want to waste it and actually turn it into a negative reputation around, oh, these guys have bothered to appear in my newsfeed, but they haven't even bothered to really make their brand look tidy or create something that's really exciting for me to consume. Something I talk about a lot in a lot of my presentations is, how do you become a thumb stopper in a world full of scrollers?
Whoa, what's a thumb stopper?
So a thumb stopper, if you think about it, when you're at home in whatever context and you're consuming content, think about how quickly we scroll through our newsfeeds all the time. A thumb stopper is a brand or a person that makes you literally stop your newsfeed and click. One of the biggest measurements we use in the employer branding world is a click-through rate. Okay. So how many people have seen your content versus how many people took an action and actually clicked. So that's what I call a real thumb-stopping brand, is one that can evoke action and really translate into a CTR and actually an action thereafter that either converts them into a candidate or a customer.
Okay.
So that would be the second one, is around image quality, size, and really excitement.
Yeah, and definitely on image size or even the video size, it's equally important, like you spoke about bandwidth and of course data bundles, etc. Yeah. What's the third one?
The third one I think is around having a call to action. So I just spoke around click-through rates and things like that. But really at the top of the funnel, what are you wanting people to do? Are you wanting people to watch your movie? Are you wanting people to download your ebook? Are you wanting people to click on a job? For me, again, if you're going to spend money creating content and actually putting media behind it, what is the action that you want people to convert to at the end? So always remember to include that into your content or into your own funnel. We have a funnel that we go by for content methodology, but what is your internal funnel? I would encourage you to sketch that out on a piece of paper and understand the user journey first before you even try and articulate your employer brand into a creative concept. So really, just to recap, I think it was around image size and quality.
Right.
It was around authenticity and actually action. And sorry, Stu, what was the first one? I've now got it so lost into my own topic.
Well, I'll stop you right there because I actually have an online question that they wanted to pose, which is about research and intelligence, which was one of your main points. First point, actually.
Oh, yes, of course. There we go. There's the first point. I came back.
So the question is, when you're researching your audience and you're thinking of employer branding, this is coming from Maureen. Thank you for the question, Maureen. What are you looking for?
When I'm doing research.
Yeah.
So again, it always goes back to audience. Maureen, I think it was Maureen that asked it. So it goes back to audience. So what I'm looking for is the cost, particularly that it's going to cost me to actually send a campaign to that audience. More so, taking a step back, I'm leveraging a product that I work with many of our customers on called LTI. And there's many different ways, obviously, to scrape data, and you should always have multiple sources. But kind of when we talk about a full funnel strategy, we start with LTI. So for example, you're recruiting Java developers. I would leverage my data sources to find out where these people are, so that I don't waste media and targeting on targeting, for example, the whole of Africa when I know they're possibly in Ghana or Nigeria or a small pool in Pretoria in South Africa, for example.
Right.
So I'm looking for location. I'm looking for the size of the audience, because that will also tell me what type of job the brand has to do in
Right.
order to engage with this pool. If it's a big pool, it means that everybody can share nicely. There's a lot of fish in the pond. But if
Right.
it's a small pool, it makes it even more competitive. I look for things like click-through rates, because that will tell me how engaged or how fickle an audience is. If they're more likely to click and the click-through rates are really high, then we don't have such a hard job to do in terms of actually getting them to engage with content. The last thing that I possibly look at, which was actually the first point I made, was the cost of the audience. So again, it's really important to understand that if you have a media budget in entirety, how do you cut that up to actually achieve your objectives? So I always map out an audience, whether it's digital skills, salespeople, and a lot of clients actually have very complex requirements. So they need a special satellite office of software developers in East Africa, but then they need their sales hub in South Africa.
Right.
Businesses in Turkey, Israel, and Malta also experience the same type of scenarios. So really, how do you map out these audiences and go after them without creating a lot of work for yourself initially? So that are really, in a nutshell, are the 4 key pillars that I look for in terms of intelligence.
So if you do lead with intelligence and you do all of this research and get those types of analytics, you will then also understand that it's how you get quickly to the point, right? So it's not hit them with the first message, we got a job, come and join us. You need to warm them up, right?
Yeah. And realistically, I mean, we are called growth markets for a reason. We're still growing. So not a lot of the budgets are in excess, for example. So that's why I try and help our customers think smarter instead of working harder, and broad-based targeting a whole region or country. We need to get smarter and more intentional around our targeting, especially when you've got huge recruitment stress on your shoulders from internal business and stakeholders. You need to start to work smart. And so really, by combining intelligence with your go-to-market strategy, it does make it far more intentional, and your results are generally much better.
Superb. If you've got questions and you're only joining us right now, we're talking employer branding. Ask your questions, put them in the chat, and of course Sam is going to tackle those. We've just tackled
Employer branding fails.
employer branding fails, and we're going to spin the wheel, Sam, to get to the next question. It's all about you. Go ahead.
No more pink.
Pink ones are the tough questions. She's avoiding those.
Oh, we've done this one.
We've done that one. Go for a second spin. Here we go. Here we go.
Again. Okay,
What is it with you and the same
I'm
question?
just going to push it a little bit. Okay, no, Stuart, the wheels are to you. I have no luck with the wheels.
Sam is picking out the questions she's answered before, so I'm going to give it a spin myself.
Okay, you've gone the other way now. So
Yeah.
Oh, Stuart.
I don't believe this. We're getting the same questions. Online, if you have questions, okay, there's a question that's come on. And this is being asked let's see if Sam can take this. So I'm asking this on behalf of an HR colleague. What do you do when an excellent employee resigns because they have found a job elsewhere, lateral move, but much higher salary? Does making a counter offer mean you really don't want to lose the person, or does it mean that you've realized you are underpaying them or undervaluing them all along? That's from Sharon.
So that's quite an interesting question, right? Because I've never believed really in a counter offer strategy personally. I've obviously worked at different places, and when I've wanted to leave, then only the counter offer arrives, right? And you kind of think to yourself, well, that's a bit late. But you've thrown in an interesting one, which is around a financial aspect. So for me, I can't really comment, I feel, on a company's financial situation with personal employees. But what I can comment on, if it's a culture reason, is obviously, I mean, people are going to leave, and that's to the snow white apple, right? If your culture isn't what you sell on the outside and people join and it's completely a sour apple, then you've really got a problem. And a lot of businesses are actually shying away from letting their employees employees speak on social media because they're scared of the negative things that they say. But my challenge straight back to those businesses are, what are you doing to create that culture internally that people feel like they can have a fluid conversation around things that are bothering them at work if the values and the actual attitude and behavior of the employees in the company are not meeting? So I think big ups to that employee that left for a bigger salary. I think that's why we all come to work, right, is to make some money. But I think that you've got to add a bit more. So often, I mean, I've heard people say that they're not in business or they're not in their role necessarily for the money. That's
Right.
third or fourth down their list of priorities. But first is the culture that's keeping them there. It's the people. Maybe it is the food. Who knows? If you're working for a beverage or an FMCG company, maybe it's the benefits. But I encourage you to think beyond pay and beyond those functional things and what you're creating, what type of work environment you're creating for those employees. Because often, if you have a great culture mix, a work environment mix, the money isn't going to be the biggest factor for that employee. So I really would encourage you to think about life after and before your paycheck or your pay slip.
All right. Let's see when we spin it and see where it stops.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go. We actually have a
Finally.
new topic.
Objectives. Let's go at it, Sam. From an employer branding perspective, talk to us about what are the objectives of doing this.
Okay, so one thing, and one of my favorite lines, and when I was a LinkedIn client, I had the same opinion, right? When people would ask me what I wanted to achieve, we just want to be the employer of choice. We just want to win the Employer Branding Award. But I'm like, but why? Why do you want to do this?
Yeah, exactly.
Is it because you want to recruit? No. It's in our KPIs and we have to win the Employer Branding Award. So for me, that's a little bit half-hearted, because is that for yourself and your personal KPIs? Is it for your business to raise the profile? Is it to recruit the best talent? Is it from a B2B perspective or a B2C perspective that your consumers will start to appreciate if you treat your employees well, that maybe you might do better business? So for me, again, it always starts like audience with objectives. What are you wanting to achieve? Some campaigns that I help clients strategize on, we have no end objective.
Yeah.
It's just really, we need to create a video and send it out. But what do you want to do with that video?
Exactly.
So really, before you spend any money, map out your objectives. They may be simple. It may just be to grow our following. It may just be to convert or to get people to read this ebook because we feel it's going to really add value to people's lives. It may just be education about your brand. But I really would firm up initially on what your objectives are and how you're going to solve for those problems. I think that media and employer branding only works well when we're really intentional and we know what we want to do. Otherwise, it can be a very fluffy space. And how do you measure fluff? You can't. So for a lot of specialists or a lot of teams, especially in growth markets that don't necessarily have an employer branding specialist because the company's a bit too nervous to invest in one, that's going to make your position or your next play or actually a role like that viable for your business. Is when you can have strong objectives, strong KPIs to measure that, you can show ROI and cost saving back to the business, whether it be quality of hire, time to hire, retention or attrition.
Super. Morgan is giving us a question online. Hi Morgan, how are you doing?
Hi, Morgan.
Thanks for the question. It says here, what role does internal communication play in employer branding?
Okay, so like digital, in my last role, I still am a digital specialist. I'm just now more refined into one platform.
Right.
But in my last role, there was often a conversation around digital as to who owns it, right? It's not something you can touch. It's not like accounting where you need a specific skill. It's not like sales where you really need a bunch of skills perhaps to actually execute. You need a bunch of stakeholders to come together and own this together collectively. Unless you have that one person that acts as a catalyst internally into your business. So really the role that internal communications has is to partner alongside HR. When I initially have meetings, and I'm often just speaking to either HR or just to marketing, I try and act as a catalyst to bring these people together in business, who funny enough don't like talking. Why? Why do HR specialists and marketing people not like to talk to each other?
Right.
You guys can leverage each other's skills in the most incredible way. So sort of back to my point, maybe not honing in on just internal communications, but maybe the internal marketing function, where generally internal comm sits and PR sits. You guys hold the stories. You guys know exactly what is happening in your business at all different times. HR owns the recruitment, the people strategy, the critical skills, and the talent pools.
Right.
Essentially, what you want to do very basically is put HR and marketing together in a room, because HR will give you your targeting and your audience, and marketing will give you your content. And that is the most perfect mix. So now when I actually speak to clients, the first thing I ask is, okay, when can we reschedule this with marketing and HR on a call together? Or what can I do to bring these teams together? Because that's going to ensure our clients and many of you actually have longer term success. One of my key areas is actually around belief. So unless I'm a person that is activated around believing in something, you won't get my full heart. So that's something I've also learned in my career, is to take people on a journey. So bring these people on a journey with you. If you're trying to change something, or you're trying to get people to buy into LinkedIn, have your own implementation plan internally as to how you're going to get certain champions to live and believe in what you're doing. And that will bring the business along the journey you actually want them to walk.
So there's 4 parts to this journey,
Yes.
right? The first part is for them to meet.
Yes, have a conversation, guys. If it's about coffee, your kids, something, just talk to each other.
Second part of that journey is to know.
Yeah, is to know exactly what you want to do, to know exactly where to find certain things. And again, as I've said, you put HR and marketing together. HR will bring you your targeting and your audience profiles as who they need you to talk to. Marketing will have all the resources and the content that they actually need to engage that audience.
We've got an online following. Before I get on to the third part, show some love, Sam. Thank you very much. We're getting the love, we're getting the comments. The third part of that journey, so we said we meet, we know, is love.
Yes.
How does love come into this equation of employer branding?
So really when we talk, it's sort of going back to the science of the funnel. As a marketer and an HR person, you know that we move someone from unaware to engaged and hired. How I've simply kind of broken this up and understood it through my journey of employer branding is that you meet a brand, you know the brand, you live it, and then you really fall in love with it. So let's use an example. What do I love? Apple, again, just because we've spoken about it before. You meet Apple, you get the experience of the phone, maybe you've met an employee, you're quite impressed, you think, oh, this is pretty cool hardware and software, it's kind of changing my life, it's making it a little edgy, you like the design of it. You get to know the brand a bit more. So now that you've got the phone, you're like, okay, this is cool, let's see what else they make. You see they have an Apple Watch. You maybe go onto LinkedIn, you read about the life or the culture of the brand. You do a bit of Facebook advertising. You engage with a bit of Facebook advertising. Then all of a sudden Google starts to send you all these messages and these prompts, right? Because it's seen that you've actually engaged or searched the word Apple.
Right.
So then it's allowing you to sort of live the brand a little bit, because all of a sudden it's in your newsfeed. Maybe you've bought the Apple Watch since the phone, you're really engaging with it. And then all of a sudden you think, oh my gosh, what was my life like before Apple? Like, how did I function? I need everything. I need the AirPods, the iPad, the MacBook Pro, the iPhone, the Apple Watch. And all of a sudden you're loving and living within this brand and this ecosystem. And then what are the jobs you've signed up to search for? Everything at Apple. So do you see how a simple value proposition of a brand is translated from leveraging their consumer brand right through to telling the employee story, to getting you to fall in love and want to work there? That is essentially what you need to do, those 4 very simple steps into getting someone to fall in love with your brand.
Meet, know, live, love. Love it. Love it. Love. Nice and simple. This show is not sponsored by Apple, by the way.
Yeah, but I would like some free product if they're giving it away.
Go for the spin, Sam. Go for that spin.
Okay, I'm going to go the other way this time.
Okay, let's see where you land and let's see what questions come up. If you just joined
again, Stuart, I have no luck. I'm sorry. Sorry, guys.
I think you've rigged this.
I haven't rigged it. This is Stuart's wheel.
All right. See, how come I get it right every single time? So we're talking to an audience that's predominantly based out in Africa. And again, not everybody works for large enterprise organizations. Some people are working for small, medium businesses. Employer branding. Talk to me about small, medium businesses approach and big businesses approach.
Yeah.
Does it vary, or is it the same thing?
So actually, it's quite interesting. Obviously, when we talk SMB and enterprise, the general difference that I'm seeing is sort of the mindset and also the investment that they're able to make. So being a smaller business, you would naturally be more conservative around your investment and possibly your route to market. Bigger enterprises actually obviously have the money to invest, and they're able to possibly get there a bit quicker, but the internal process is a bit like a dinosaur. So I would say that each could benefit a little bit from understanding each other's sort of value proposition and really strategies. So SMB businesses, as I've said, are a bit more conservative in their approach. So how do you, again, go back to your objectives and keep those really tight so that you're not wasting any money and you're able to show the business ROI? I think also the way you potentially plan for an SMB business is slightly different. the sprints are much shorter because you constantly need to be measuring and assessing at every different level of that journey. Enterprise businesses have the resources, they have huge marketing departments, but just as the startup mentality, they're able to get to market a bit slower than the smaller businesses because they've generally got so much red tape around them.
Yeah.
So really I think there's a lot to learn from each sector. Obviously the way we work is quite similar in terms of planning.
Right.
But really I think what is also quite key is that the enterprise businesses have a lot of weight around them. They're older, I think more established brands that have obviously excelled in what they're doing to be able to be these huge enterprise businesses. So for smaller businesses, have a look at what your bigger competitors are doing and use it as, I think, a bit of inspiration, but definitely put your own mix on it because you guys are far more agile and you're able to get to market in a much quicker fashion. Possibly with something even a bit more edgier because you don't have these fat corporate brand, corporate identity manuals that you have to follow. So I think both uniquely have their own strengths and they also have opportunities to learn from each other.
Yeah, leverage that agility, lead with intelligence, and definitely the internet has leveled the playing field. So put your best at it as long as it's authentic, and you should win that talent war. Do you want me to have a spin at this one?
No, I'm going to try one more time.
If you
Never give up.
If you got questions, put them in the chat, and then we're going to answer those. Nigeria's
No.
in the house, India's
Okay.
in the house.
No,
We've
sorry,
got people
guys.
from Kenya, we've got people from South Africa. Hey Gordon, Mama, how you doing, guys? Thanks for the
Okay.
comments. Somehow I get this right.
Stuart, you are perfect.
I
That's why we work together. You make me shine.
So what is the role of employees and then what is the role of management? I think we touched a little bit about this. Some people might be only joining. In 30 seconds, Sam, what's the role of employees and management when it comes to employer branding?
So I'm going to quickly touch on the higher aspect of this, which is around that really scary policy that management love to send their employees around engaging on social media. A couple of years ago, yes, it was detrimental to your career, but I think people have learned through other people's examples and through their wrongdoing on social media what to actually do that's right. So I would encourage management to actually maybe create a policy or a guideline rather out of that policy. You don't want to be scaring your employees. You want to make them your brand champions.
Yeah.
Employees, I would encourage management and challenge them in a healthy way to start talking more about their day-to-day lives and to sort of lead by example, I think. Because there's a lot of employees that aren't in these very senior positions that have such great things to say, especially graduates. A lot of businesses are connected to the graduates, possibly from a management trainee program, a graduate program. They are amplifying your brand voice. And I don't think enough note is really being taken of that.
Yeah.
And I think you can really learn from the sort of young and untainted spirit that these graduates have around content creation. So managers, I really encourage you to be as jovial, I think, and as maybe sometimes slightly naive and have a bit more fun on the platform.
Yeah.
So really, I think both groups can challenge each other and empower each other to create better content.
I'm a big advocate for reverse mentoring. So if you find that you're in leadership and you're not yet quite as comfortable on these platforms, call somebody young within the organization, someone who's a digital native, someone who's got a passion for this sort of thing, and learn from them. You can learn. One day you could be the teacher, the next day you could be the student. So
just like Stuart doesn't know what a boomerang is. He had to meet me to understand how to make boomerangs and Snapchat. And now it's one of our favorite pastimes.
So we've got a question that's coming over from online. Maureen is asking about global organizations not giving local institutions enough freedom to go at it. What would be your, because of course they're worried about what people say on the platform and how it will taint the brand, etc. What would be your approach if you're working in a global organization and are currently feeling a little restricted?
So I think it's all around your positioning and the way you anchor what you're trying to do and building that power of influence. So, I mean, when you're working for a global sort of business, your strategy is generally owned in one location, which is often centralized, and sometimes you can feel a bit like an executor. But I think what you need to position is, okay, this is my market, which I obviously am a specialist in, that is your market. Are you expecting this market to grow? Yes or no? Obviously, the answer is going to be yes, because when growth comes, profitability comes. So naturally, your business leaders want an organization to grow. So I think if you can articulate your growth plans and how you're going to get there, you will have people buying in. Obviously, if you're having a tantrum, I think, on the other end of the world because you're not getting the funding, have you put together a big enough business case? We work with obviously a lot of businesses that have head offices, I think, in America, in other places besides Africa. And Africa just generally are a partner or subsidiary, and they need to execute their own strategy. So I think the key takeouts there is localization, understand that you are the specialist, a growth plan, be able to articulate and position the value that you're driving and why you want to do it. The what and the how I just don't think is sufficient anymore, especially to drive internal business cases. You need to get people to believe. And the power of influence is much stronger than you think, especially when you're a specialist in your market.
Love it, love it. Got a comment from Joel here. It
Yes.
says, as you were shouting out the countries, you didn't mention UK. I know Brexit hasn't happened yet, so we'll give a shout out to the UK.
UK, my favorite place to go shopping because of Primark.
All right, so if you got questions, ask in the chat.
Yeah.
We're tackling employer branding. Sam, do you want to give that a spin? We're tackling employer branding. Sam is a specialist in this area. Whoa!
Whoops, we nearly lost the wheel. There we go.
Specialist in this area, and we're answering your questions dynamically live.
I'm moving it straight to there.
All right, so we're moving it to the green one. So I think the question was, who owns this? Is this HR? Is this marketing?
Yeah.
First prize, who owns employer branding?
Both actually parties own employer branding. Obviously, the general perception, I think, that it's supposed to sit with HR.
Right.
But again, I think around internal capability, you need to partner. I don't think the market has quite reached the level yet where specialists are being employed to do this role. So you really need to create champions and drive that strategy with the people that are actually willing to get off their seats and to possibly change the brand perception and recruit better individuals. And funny enough, those are often your hiring managers. They feel the pressure more than anyone else.
Yeah.
So if you go to the software development manager and you say to him, what is the risk of you not actually having these people in the next 6 months? You'll probably find it's really quite great. So if you can get him to buy into what you're doing to make his life easier, everything is going to get better. So for me, it's really about a partnership.
Yeah, and of course what you find with hiring managers is that they understand the DNA that is required to be successful in the role. So they will understand the commitment, the pressures that someone would have in terms of travel, in terms of expectations, working after hours, etc. And if they can communicate that authentically, and given that people can look up their profiles on LinkedIn, they're more likely to believe that person than they are to believe something that has been packaged by HR or packaged by marketing.
Very much so.
So it's all hands on deck. Rope in your lines of business. I'm just going to go to the next one here, Sam. Go big or go home.
Yeah.
What would be your one line around that? I know
Go
you
big
can't
or
do
go
one
home.
line. Around employer branding.
Go big or go home.
Yeah.
So I think it's again back to planning and understanding what you want to say. If you're going to invest all that time to
Right.
go big, make sure that it actually starts at home. And it starts by building that authentic brand story and not something that's overproduced. Again, I think that's the biggest mistake companies are making is let's just put something together and put it out there because we need to stay relevant and ahead of the competition. That's not keeping you relevant, and it's certainly not putting you in front of the competition. Take that time and understand what it is you're trying to achieve, what it is you want to say, and who it is you want to say it to.
Okay. And then what are the metrics that actually matter if someone's going to go through this employer branding initiative? What do they need to measure? What really matters to management? What matters to the business?
So I think one thing I'd like to demyth again or kind of myth bust is around followers. So for a long time, really they were considered a huge metric, then they became a vanity metric, then they were a metric again everybody cared about.
Right.
To go back, I think that's the first picture you need to analyze in your employer branding world. Remember, the crux of social media essentially is around creating that community. So if you're not creating a community that matters to your business, you might as well stop now. You know, a lot of brands carry a lot of weight. I've got about 20,000 or 200,000 followers.
Right.
So what if they're completely in the wrong country, the wrong job function, the wrong seniority? Understand who it is you want to talk to and start there. So definitely for me, followers is something I look at first because that's generally the picture we need to change for organic, sustainable, long-term engagement. Because if we can bring them into your pond, essentially, we don't have to go fishing all the time for these people and spend money on engaging them and reaching them when they're always on and engaged into our pool. Another metric for me that matters is click-through rate. So again, it doesn't matter, I think, how many people see your post. What matters is how many people took the action and actually converted, because essentially that is what you're spending money on, is the conversion rate or the lead generation. A lot of businesses just care about the leads and they're often on about how many leads they don't have. Or have you done a sufficient job at the top of the funnel in creating that brand awareness, selling your why, so that essentially your quality of your leads and the quantity both improve? So conversion rate, followers, engagement rate, and content marketing score are something that we're increasingly having a look at. I feel personally that maybe talent brand index, which is something we talk about a lot, isn't often a fair representational measure. Really of how we articulate how strong a brand is. I would rather actually look to your content marketing score, how your content and your efforts around your conversations that you're having are contributing to real engagement. So there's we sort of see platforms like Instagram shy away from likes. What defines real brand engagement? So to me, that's the engagement with your content. If you're spending all the time creating it and the money creating it, you want to know that it's resonating.
Yeah.
So how effective is that content score? And then talent brand engagement, especially by function. So the talent brand index looks at a whole group of people and how engaged they are versus your peers.
Right.
Talent brand engagement looks at, by function, looks at how engaged certain functions are with your brands against peers. So if you are a big financial institution looking for software developers, you can start to benchmark your talent brand engagement, so your frequency, your likes, your comments, your social actions, your shares, against that of your competitors to tell you how effective the talent brand actually is. So the index is really quite a broad blanket approach, but really when we start to drill into engagement, especially by function, as I've mentioned, you can really start to move the needle, I think, and give yourself and your company tangible metrics to keep improving on.
All right, we're getting to the top of the hour. We're about to finish. I know some of you have got meetings to go to. We're about to finish. Going to wrap it up with a couple of last outstanding areas.
Okay, what have we got left? We've got skills, employees and management, media mix, and rich media. I think I'd like to talk to skills, Stu.
All right.
Because again, I think this is something that is often so overcomplicated. And a lot of teams tell us all the time that they're hiring copywriters, they're hiring campaign managers, they're hiring visual designers, videographers. It doesn't have to be that excessive, I must be honest. I think I was quite fortunate in my skill set that I actually started as an advertising student. So I'm a copywriter by trade, which means effectively I can create content, I can write. So that sort of took me into the communications industry, and that combined with on-the-job learning around design skills, which I was also quite fortunate to learn at my sort of design art school, enabled me to put the sort of strategy side of business and communication and employer branding together with making my own content. So if you're looking for people to bring into the business to actually drive this, the biggest skill would actually be around self-starting. The motivation that a single person has to maybe succeed and to do good. So it isn't actually around academic skills that I would say you need to look for. It's more the characteristics and the character that a person has. Because you can employ someone that can just write but has the passion to learn about design and maybe social media management. But I wouldn't say that you really need to do a checkbox exercise of all these different people, because it's costing you a lot of money to make one piece of content. You really just need someone, I think, that comes with a bit of a writing background.
Yeah.
That is possibly a digital native, not to outrule anybody else, obviously, with age limitations. But someone that's a digital native, and it's someone that has brand experience, because I think that again is the biggest point around authenticity and creating that compelling brand story. So those would be my top 3 skills.
Top 3 skills that someone would need if they're starting out on this journey, or if you're looking to recruit somebody in.
Definitely, or someone internally from your brand and marketing department that has been working on these things. Branding and marketing professionals have the skill of writing, or at least determining what a good or bad message is.
Excellent, I like it. I think there was a media mix.
Yeah, so I think, let's end on media mix. So obviously there's so many different types of media, but again, it goes back to your objective. So I would definitely encourage you to dig deeper into that, and then find media that actually works on maybe different platforms too. But particularly in the LinkedIn environment, obviously there's different features or solutions that do different things. So if you want to grow your followers, there's a product for that. If you want to create a longer term talent pool, or you want to drive very fast leads, there's all the different products. But understand that one in isolation doesn't always work, but it's great to have a media mix and make sure that you're getting people at every different level of the funnel. You know, for example, you could supplement follower adverts, which really work well on desktop, with actually rich sponsored content, which will attract and engage your mobile users. So again, audience, understand who you're talking to, and match the right products with your objectives.
Elevator pitch, answer to one question I've just received online is, what is the one key message I need to reinforce with my clients about HR branding?
One key message, authenticity. I know I've repeated that a lot, but I cannot I cannot say it enough to all my clients, to the industry, to the individuals on this call. Make sure that what you are creating is true to your brand and true to the promise. Because, I mean, a lot of businesses right now are also talking about inclusivity and diversion. Inclusivity and diversity, not diversion. Inclusivity and diversity. And how do you actually create a story that is true to that and true to the actions that you're taking within your organization to make it a more diverse culture? So people can really call that out. And again, you don't want all the keyboard warriors in the world to be jumping on your post, attacking you, because what you're saying versus what you're actually doing is not the truth.
Yeah. Love it. Guys, that's it.
Okay.
I talked about the fact that it's time to shine as a brand. Today we've tried to debunk and demystify some of the key components that will drive you to success. I'd like to thank Sam. If you're online right now, how about a virtual thanks to Sam? And of course, a mention of exactly where you are and what you found most useful. What we try and do with this particular LinkedIn live stream is educate, engage, and empower you. So if you've learned something, pass this feed on to somebody else so that they can learn. Sam, thank you.
It's a pleasure.
And thank you.
And in the words of Shakira, it's time for Africa. Have a great day, everybody, and thank you for having me.
It's time to shine, guys. Thank you very much for joining the stream. As usual, stay connected, empower somebody else, and help somebody else.
Bye.
Cheers.